Alright guys, welcome to another edition of Learn How with Pacific Angler. My name is Jordan Simpson, and today I'll be tying a simple sort of 1.5 stage steelhead fly for you. It's a simple prawn imitation, great for anadromous fish. So follow along. If you have any questions, come see me at the shop, or you can call me at the store 604-872-2204, or come visit me at Pacific Angler at 78 East Broadway. Alright guys, starting out here, I've got my tube here in the vise adapter. It's probably about 2 inches long overall. We can always cut that down as we need to, but I always like to give myself a little more room to tie with and then trim it afterwards. So starting out, I've got a small to medium diameter tube here. You can always go larger if you're going to be using larger leaders. Different diameters for different fish, but for most salmon, most steelhead, I'm just going to be tying on a simple small to medium diameter tube here. Alright guys, so just going to start here behind the end of the tube, and I'm going to attach my thread here. I'm going to leave myself a little room to attach junction tubing, but honestly not too much. For the thread, I'm using UTC 140, but any heavy denier or heavy aught thread will be fine. Anyways, I'm just starting my thread there, and we're going to start there, and then we're going to just tie in a small little bit of FNF fibers here for you. So FNF Jelly frits right here, really popular with the lake anglers. I honestly feel probably a little underused by the steelhead anglers. Makes great bumps and shoulders. So I'm just going to tie it in. I've got it here in the shrimp pink or shell pink, whatever you want to call it. Tie that in, advance my thread a bit. And I'm just going to palmer this going forward. I'm only going to do a couple of 3 wraps, just enough to build a little bump in a ball. That'll act as my little prop for my rear post there. So, a couple of 3 wraps, my thread back. I'm always going to do my last wrap around the thread. It sort of gets you in position to finish off and capture the material. And just like that, it's captured. And trim it off. Scrunch it together. On tubes, you can do that a lot easier. And then I'm just going to sort of gather it backwards and form a little thread down. Doesn't have to be perfect either. And there we go. Next step here, guys, I'm just going to tie in some orange and black barred rubber legs. These will act as the feelers, imitate them per se. And all I'm going to do here is wrap it around my thread and line up the ends. And there we go. And by doing that, I can control exactly where I want things to go. I want them to go right there. So right there is where they'll go. I just want to tease each one down to the left and right of the fly. And there you go, folks. You can see there if I rotate it towards you, they sort of splay out left and right. The next step is going to be taking an orange Schlappen. I've got it here in hot orange. I'm tied in by the tip. And if you know how I like to tie in feathers that I'm going to be palmering, I always tie them in and then fold back that tip to act as an anchor. There you go. I've tied it back to anchor it. That way it won't come undone when you would wrap it or slide out. I want to sort of lazily advance my thread up forward out of the way towards the front or where the eye would be. I'm just going to use my hackle pliers here. I'm just going to palmer this here. Start saying that this is a 2-stage intruder, but I like to call it a 1.5 because I'm not doing, more or less 2 single stages attached to each other, which I find a lot of 2 stages really just are. So a couple of 3 wraps there. Then I'm just going to take my thread, sort of lazily advance it backwards. And again, my last wrap, I'm just going to go underneath. There we go. And trim the excess there. Grab it, tease it backwards, lock it in. The next step I'm going to be doing here, guys, is I'm going to tie in a little bit of a tail of the fly, but it'll imitate feelers again of the shrimp. We got orange ostrich right here for you. You can use ray as well if you'd like. So I'm just going to gather a little clump of it. Got it here, guys. Just going to tie that in, extending a little ways back. Just going to center it. I'm just going to tease it out and around a little bit. Trim the excess butt ends right there. There we go. The next step I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to be tying in some mono eyes. These ones here are pre-made, but I'm just doing this for the sake of the video. I actually usually make my own mono eyes. If you're curious about how to do that, there is a video on how to do that, as well as you can always come in and come see me. But anyways, I've got some mono eyes here. I'd consider them a medium size. Available in 3 different sizes, but I would call this a medium. I'm going to tie this in on each side of the hook. I guess each side of the tube, technically. And I like to extend them pretty far out. Gives a little bit of a target point closer to the actual hooks themselves. Couple loose wraps just for positioning. And then I'll start to lock her down. And I'm just going to trim the mono here. I want it to be even. Nail clippers are great for that over scissors. Again, I've got my mono ends even. I'm just going to cover them up, secure them a little more. And then I'm going to tie in the next part. I'm going to be using Lagartun pink for this. Just going to tie it in on top, nothing fancy. And all I'm going to do is advance my thread forward a little bit here. At this point, I do sort of use my rotary feature, so I'm just going to wrap it around that post there. Take my material and start winding her. And you don't need to go too far. Probably go maybe just about there, maybe a centimeter or so back. Slide my thread down the tube and just gather that Lagartun right there. Lock her down. Turn her up. There we go. Next step here for us, guys, I'm going to do another little bump here. So now what I'm going to take is a little bit of the same material, which is FNF Jelly. And I'm going to do a little bit less here because at the end we are adding quite a little bit more. Again, a couple palmers, nothing crazy. Just helps build a little bump. we like to use to help prop. Take my thread, capture that off. Trim it. And then gather it back and build a little thread down. And you guessed it, sort of repeat part way here. So I'm going to be doing hot orange again. This is where the materials do start to change a little bit. So a little bit of Schlappen. Here's your prop. On it, grab it, pull the tip back, secure it, trim it, lock her down. I'm just teasing and palmering the fiber backwards. One more completed wrap. There we go. If you want to go crazy, there's going to be a lot of stuff happening in here, so you really don't need too much. You've already got your FNF bump. You've got your Schlappen. You're going to be adding a whole lot more, so there's going to be a lot of structure. Remember, gather it backwards and tease it a little bit. Get that nice teardrop happening. The next material I'll be tying in will be mirror flash, but honestly you can use any long fibered, single-sided Palmer or polar chenille of some sort. French Aqua Eyes, which we'll be using up next anyways, is a great option as well. So I'm going to tie it in. I'm right-handed, so I'll tie it in appropriately. A couple wraps, literally not too much happening. 1, 2, just 2 completes, 3 depending how you want to count it. And we'll lock her down. Trim the excess. Tease back, secure and lock it. Next material, French Aqua Eyes and bubblegum. Tie it in, lock it down, trim it, wrap it. You can see I'm wrapping like on top of the wraps. With a thicker cord, if you're going to utilize it in a shoulder or bump, I actually like to wrap it pretty tighter on each other. It just creates more of a prop again to support your Marabou later on. Alright, a couple of wraps. Just gonna lock her in, trim it, and clean it up by pulling it back and locking down. Alright guys, the next step here, what we're going to do is we're going to build a little bit of a dubbing loop. And we're not actually going to be dubbing, we're going to be putting in some more ostrich. So a little loop. There we go. Got my OPST dubbing spinner here. I've used a lot of different dubbing spinners. The OPST ones are the best. One thing I like to do when I'm ever putting just ostrich or rhea naked into a dubbing loop without any support, like ice dub, is I like to wax the thread. That little bit of wax, you don't need to go crazy, but that little bit of wax does just help hold on to the fibers of ostrich and rhea. Sometimes I use my fingers just to work it in. That's about it. Alright guys, next up here I've got ostrich again. All I'm going to do here, not really honestly taking too much of it, just a handful, a little pinch. Out of there. What I'm going I'm just gonna hold it like this, if you can see. Gather it, spread it out. And next thing I'm gonna do here is just gonna trim the ends. I'm just gonna put it into my dubbing loop. I'll use a bodkin or a needle afterwards to space everything out. Grab, and a little trick here is to spin your thread a couple times. It'll help lock it in. That tension there will help lock the thread in. You probably see it spin a little bit. That's okay. What I'm going to do here, folks, is spread that ostrich out a little bit. Just to use your bodkin. Just going straight down. Will help tease and line up all the material and spread it out a little more. Sort of acts like a mini comb. Alright guys, so I've got that ostrich in there. I'm just going to trim the butts a little shorter. And now I'm just going to spin her up. Using my bodkin to pull the other materials out of the way while I spin up my loop. So you constantly sort of pick it out as it's spinning. Advance my thread forward a little bit. And all I'm going to do is take my loop, use all the material backwards, just like in a brush. I'll pinch it. And I'll start to wrap it. And all I'm doing is really palmering this forward. Alright, you see it's sort of all haywire, that's okay. Again, taking my thread. Just gonna go backwards over that, lock in that loop. Trying to pull it all forward. And just gonna sort of lock it forward in a sense. There we go. You could almost fish it like that, guys. It'd probably work more than fine, but I do find it's a little delicate at that point in there. Next step here, guys, I'm going to take a little bit of shrimp pink, or shell pink. I'm going to tie it in by the tips. This is Marabou, guys. So we're almost done. And again, these flies really don't take too long to tie, except the fact that I'm trying to tie it for you guys. When you get good at this and you prep your materials, honestly, 10 minutes maybe. Alrighty, so I'm tying my Marabou by the tip. And just like everything else I tie in, I'll fold the stem back to help lock it in. Alright guys, so keeping your fingers moist, what I want to do is tease that all back. Just a couple wraps of this because you're going to be adding in another color. Couple securing wraps. Lock it in. bit, keep all that material teased down and back. Next part is going to be tying in a saddle. My saddles usually, I like to put them between Marabou. So I'm just going to line up the saddle here, guys, so it lines up to go a little bit past the actual eyes of the fly. Alright, I'm just lining up the tips there. There we go. Alright, gonna lock those in. And there we go, we're almost there, guys. So the next step here, one more piece of Marabou. Again, just prepping the feather, stripping any of the unwanted hairs that'll just get in the way. Tie this in by the tip. And again, take that tip, fold it backwards. 1 or 2 wraps just helps lock it in. Alright, advance my thread forward just a little bit. That's all there is to go. And a couple of 3 wraps of the orange now. Again, moistening the Marabou feathers itself. I'm doing a couple of wraps. There we go, a couple of 3 wraps is all it's needed. Capture the Marabou with a couple of wraps. I'm just going to turn and secure it, give it a little bit of a pull. Trim her down. And finish her off. Next step I'm going to do, I'm just going to tie in some small little micro dumbbells. I'd call them extra small. I'm going to tie them in on the bottom to help keel the fly. There you go. Next step is I'm going to take some polar flash. Right here, I've taken full length strands. I probably gathered about 7 or 8 strands in one clump. Again, I'm going to fold them over. Line them up. And put them wherever I want. I actually want them over here. I'm going to put it there. And fold it back. Like that. Alright, the next step here, guys, is to take some select mallard. I'm just going to strip this feather here. I'm just going to bend this feather out a bit. I'll tie it in just like so. I've crimped it. just gonna figure 8 that in. Quick finish and clean it up, and you're pretty much done. Secure that in, nice and tight. Alright guys, we're pretty much there. As you can see, I got a nice shell back there. Got a nice profile, I got some eyes, I've got carapace, I've got feelers, I've got legs. It's nice and sparse, nice and hollow. Alright, my next move here guys is to take some Solares medium. And all I'm going to do is start a nice little bead. I'm just going to rotate my vise and I'm going to tease that bead all around. Fill in some gaps. Definitely hit and coat the thread between the dumbbell to help protect it so it doesn't fray on any rocks. And you're going to see really how bright these materials are under UV light, so stand by. Alright guys, we're almost done for the most part there. I'm just going to release my fly from the tube. See it there. Super simple, super easy, nice and sparse, but nice profile, nice and tasty. Next step here guys is to cut that tube down a little bit. Now one trick here before you melt the end is to prep your mandrel. Take the mandrel and shove it all the way through, because when you melt this down you will want to reopen that hole. Sometimes it closes. So I've got it ready to go. You'll see it's right just inside. I'm going to take my lighter, light just the tube. So it starts to round backwards onto itself. And push that through. There you go, guys. Super simple, sparse, but profiled steelhead prawn. Any questions, come see me at the shop at 78 East Broadway, or give me a ring, 604-872-2204. Thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.